Gary Williams here. Some friends of mine are making a difference in the community, and one of the ways they're doing that is helping to sponsor this podcast. Petroselli Homes Realty Group is a boutique brokerage service located in downtown Niles. They offer a personal and intentional touch to the home buying and selling market. They take the time to learn each client's story, much like this podcast, because to them, the first step in linking buyers to the home of their dreams starts with understanding and a great deal of trust. John and Jennifer Petroselli have had the honor of helping countless buyers and sellers make effective real estate decisions to plant their roots, raise their families, expand their wealth, or simply relax and retire. So if what I've described is what you might be looking for in a realtor, I suggest getting in touch with Petroselli Homes on Niles Boulevard in downtown Niles. Now, coming to you straight from Fremont, California, this is the Fremont Podcast, dedicated to telling the stories of the past and present of the people and places of the city of Fremont, one conversation at a time. Now, here's your host, Ricky B.
Hello, Fremont. You are listening to episode number 26 of the Fremont Podcast. This is a special episode. It is airing on Election Day, primary election day, June 7th. I wanted to sit down with Matt from the Chamber of Commerce, the Fremont Chamber of Commerce, and talk about politics. I know that's not everyone's favorite subject, but each of us has a part to play in electing our officials and in the opportunities that engage our community. And so I wanted to sit down with Matt, who is a representative of the Chamber of Commerce, who works for the Chamber of Commerce and represents our community to the broader political scene, whether it's state or federal. Matt is someone who hears the voice of the community and takes our voice to the state level, to the national level, and is able to share that with them so that it can in turn affect the way that decisions and policies are made. So on this day, Election Day, whether you're listening to this before you vote or not, this will be a helpful conversation. It'll be useful to you as you look and think about how you will vote and how you will engage our community in the future. Well, I'm back at the Fremont Chamber of Commerce for this episode, and this time I am joined by Matt Senekeremian. Okay. Matt, it's good to be here and join with you today. I wanted to, when I was here a few weeks ago with Cindy, we had talked about just the different ways that the Chamber of Commerce is involved in the community and in the state. And we were talking about different ways that we might be able to interact with the Chamber of Commerce to help the citizens of Fremont learn more about what's going on here and how they can be involved. And one of the things that came up was to talk about politics. I know everyone wants to talk about politics, but we're going to talk about politics and more importantly, how the Chamber of Commerce is involved in the political scene, both locally and then also statewide. And then we also want to just talk about the election that we have, the primary election coming up, and then we'll have the follow-up election in November. But Matt is joining me today because he is on staff here at the Chamber of Commerce, and he is involved in the political side of things. So I'm not even going to attempt to describe what his job is. I'm going to let Matt do that for himself. Matt, good to have you. Welcome to the podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do here at the Chamber of Commerce, and then also maybe a little bit of your what got you here? How did you get where you are right now?
Sure, Ricky. Thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting the Chamber once again. And thank you for doing this podcast and highlighting Fremont. I think that every opportunity we have to showcase our community's not just Fremont, but in general, is very important. And I thank you for your efforts.
Yeah.
I joined the Chamber 4 years ago as the Director of Government and Community Affairs. I graduated. I'm a Bay Area native.
Okay.
Graduated from San Francisco State University with a bachelor's in political science, a minor in international relations. And in 2017, I earned my master's degree in political management from George Washington University.
Wow.
And I've worked on political campaigns in the past, nonprofit work, fundraising, and I eventually made my way to the Fremont Chamber.
Wow. Did you, when you started all of that, like when you were, I don't know, registering or pursuing your degrees in politics, did you have aspirations to run for office, or did you want to do more of what you're doing now behind the scenes? I know we've already talked about the fact that you don't necessarily like to be behind a microphone, so maybe
yeah,
maybe that kind of answers the question. I don't know.
You know, it's I've loved the political scene from when I was a kid.
Okay.
I loved reading books about former presidents, and we always being up to speed on current affairs. Did I ever aspire to run for office? The itch comes every so often, but I do prefer working directly with people and helping bring stakeholders together to address issues. I'm more of that behind the scenes person.
Okay. So you said you started with the Chamber of Commerce 4 years ago, and so what does your role look like? What is it that you do with the Chamber of Commerce?
As the Director of Government and Community Affairs, my focus is on being the voice of the business community with our elected officials. So one part of that is working on the permitting side and the bureaucratic side of businesses having issues getting permits. They don't understand the process. There's some conflicting messaging that they get. So the Chamber works with them on addressing that and helping them get started as quickly as possible. We want them focused on getting their business started, growing their business, making money, and having that positive impact in the city. And we can help with getting that up, moving as quickly as possible. The other aspect is we track legislation at the local, state, and federal levels. Anything that we feel can be a positive or a negative for the business community is something we track, and we update and share our thoughts and with our members and the business community as a whole. We work very closely with the California Chamber of Commerce, the United States Chamber of Commerce, and we participate in various coalitions and stakeholder groups with other chambers and business associations, sometimes on a very specific issue, sometimes in the broader kind of business environment. And we do our best to advocate on behalf of businesses. If there's an issue that we feel can have a negative impact, we work to bring those businesses from that sector or industry-wide to the table to share their thoughts, their concerns with the decision makers, because they need to hear directly from businesses, and we help facilitate that.
That's awesome. That is really cool. I honestly didn't know that was part of the role of what even the Chamber of Commerce does, and obviously now hearing it from you, knowing that that's your job, your role in our city. So quick question then, maybe it's not a quick question, but a question for you. What are some of the things that you've been able to see accomplished in your role or in the Chamber of Commerce, maybe over the last few years? Like, what are some of the things that you've been able to be a part of? I hear what you're saying as being almost a sense of, this is, my job, my job description. But what are some of the things that you've been able to be involved in that the Chamber has done over the last few years?
Sure. And I think Cindy actually touched on this in her interview a couple weeks back about how every chamber is unique. And our chamber leadership has always believed the importance of having a government affairs staffer. Not all chambers necessarily have it. A dedicated staffer focused on the political issues.
Okay.
A lot of times it can be the CEO who handles that as part of their portfolio of work. In our case, we work as a team and work very closely and rely on each other to get the work done.
Okay.
Fremont is it's great to be in Fremont because it really is you see a strong sense of innovation and entrepreneurship in the city. You can go to any of the business parks in the area, and each suite is doing amazing work. And we're fortunate to be able to, before COVID and again now, to go around to businesses and visiting them and see the work that they do and really understand why they've chosen Fremont. Fremont has become that focal point.
Yeah, that's good.
From an issues perspective, there's been a number of issues. I have to say that during COVID, we were able to really focus on getting that right information out to our members and non-members as quickly and efficiently as possible. We understood from the very beginning that time is money.
Right, right.
If the sooner we got information out to our members, the sooner they were able to apply, keep their businesses afloat, and move forward. It was not uncommon for me to be on a 6:30 call in the morning with Washington, D.C., understanding what was happening, especially in the early days of what was happening, what they're thinking now, how are things progressing. A lot of times by the next day, something would have changed already. But we were working with all of our stakeholders at the local, state, and federal levels, sharing what we were hearing locally directly from our businesses and getting kind of those data points, sharing it with the elected officials so that they could make the appropriate decisions as far as what had to be done to protect our businesses.
Okay. So, wow, that's incredible to be able to have somebody in our city, on our team, if you will, that is connected directly in with a lot of the conversations that are happening nationwide, statewide, that sort of thing, and being able to share on behalf of our community, the businesses of our community, the way things are on the ground. That seems like a big responsibility and a great opportunity in a way as well. Have you felt like it was? Have you felt like what you were doing really benefited us as a city?
I hope so, and I'm fortunate to say that I worked very closely with our city staff,
okay.
The mayor, the council members, the city manager, and specifically the economic development staff. We were working very, very closely. I saw them as our. There wasn't a conversation that would take place that we weren't kind of having together and brainstorming ideas together of what needed to be done and how to implement something.
Yeah. Wow, that's.
So it was a team effort,
yeah.
and I hope that when we look back, we can say that the steps we took were the right steps.
Yeah. Did you find? I'm curious. Did you find yourself more busy during the COVID time, doing because there was so many changes and turns along the way? Did you find yourself more busy, or was it just a different type of busy that you were involved with?
It was a different type of busy because normally we're hosting different events in a normal time, when in-person events, whether it be our kind of big summer events with Burger and Brew Fest, Festival of the Arts, or Street Eats, our State of the City event, and other smaller informative events. When COVID hit, it completely shifted to doing Zoom events, which I had never done before.
Right.
And hosting Zoom events that as quickly as possible with sometimes very little notice. We would have a session with SBDC or the Small Business Administration, with local officials, sharing as much information as we can. If you need help filling out forms. Well, we have a webinar for that. We were able to move forward with hosting our coffee series, which were they started off in person,
right,
but moved virtual. Which were monthly events with council members and city staff and state officials, kind of informal Zoom sessions where you can just have conversations, ask questions, and have a very open dialogue with elected officials and stakeholders. So I'd say it wasn't less work or more work. It was just different work.
Just very, very different. So as we approach the primary election coming up here, I've actually told you this, obviously not on record until now, but I've actually told you this, that, personally, and, I'm probably going to disappoint a number of people that might be listening, but personally, politics has never been something that I was too interested in. As a matter of fact, as I was listening to you talk here on the interview and then even talking beforehand, I feel like in this way, you and I probably had opposite poles. When I would hear politics, my mind would often shut down and I would just try to do what I could to get by. Whereas, and I think when you started thinking about politics, it was actually something that you pursued and something that you enjoyed being involved in. So I think maybe you can help me a little bit.
I'll try.
So I've received a few things in the mail recently. I brought with me it's called the Voter Information Guide sent to me by the County of Alameda. And this is for the election that will end on June 7th. And I think we are in a time right now where people can send in their ballots if they want to, but then they can also go out and vote on June 7th, which will finalize this primary voting period. But I'll tell you what, I get these things in the mail, the voter guide, and I get the ballots and stuff, and I look at it and I feel like I'm looking at something completely foreign to me. And so I'm wondering if maybe you can help me out as I think through, what am I doing on June 7th? Like what is it that I should be concerned about? What is it that I should take note of? Because oftentimes for me, and again, this is really embarrassing and it is what it is, but oftentimes I get to my ballot and I want to vote, and I just literally look and say, I don't even know what this position does. I don't even know who any of these people are, and I think I might have seen some of their names on a sign or on a social media ad or something like that, and I'm like, well, I saw their name, they must do something important, so I'll put their name down as my vote. So I know we can't answer all the questions, and obviously, people need to vote for whoever they feel is going to do the job the best. But can you help me understand, at least specifically regarding the June 7th primary elections, can you help me understand a little bit of what I'm seeing and how to think through my choice of for voting in the primary elections here?
So taking a step back, the primary in California is a direct primary, which means that the top two vote getters, regardless of party affiliation, move on to the general election in November. And as you mentioned, voting has already started in California.
So basically, just to clarify that, what you're saying is no matter whether they're Republican, Democrat, Green Party, whatever, the top two people that get the most votes in the primary election move on to the election in November.
In November, yes.
Okay, all right.
Voters should have received their ballots in the mail in the beginning of May, and could have mailed it back, dropped it off at a voting center, or at the drop boxes, or you can go in and do the more traditional vote by mail or vote in person.
Voting in person,
on June 7th.
And I think right here, I actually am using the guide right now for Fremont. It says Centerville Library, East Bay Depot Cafe on Fremont Boulevard, the Fremont City Building, Fremont Main Library, Irvington Library, Niles Library, Northwestern Polytech University, and Ohlone College. So those seem to be all the Fremont locations that you can drop your ballot. And so that started on May 9th is when that started.
Yeah, and this primary has a number of important seats coming up. We'll start with the statewide. So you have the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, state treasurer.
And those are all on the ballot that we are going to be voting for those different.
Those are all statewide. So it's governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, the controller, state treasurer, attorney general, insurance commissioner, and in our case, it would be the District 2 for the Board of Equalization.
District 2? Okay.
Yeah. The U.S. Senate will be listed twice.
Okay.
So the first one is, since Senator Padilla was appointed after Kamala Harris was elected vice president, the first time the first listing is for who will finish out the term. Mm-hmm. The second time is for the actual primary.
Okay.
So that's why it's not a big typo. That's the reason why the Senate is listed twice.
Okay.
And then you also have your House of Representatives, state treasurer.
So these elections, the U.S. Senate and the U.S. The House of Representatives, is more of a federal position, as opposed to some of the other ones that you mentioned that were statewide or even local.
And then the state Senate and state assembly are the state level legislative seats.
Okay.
And then you have several nonpartisan local seats as well.
Okay. What from your perspective, and I think you've, as we've talked before, you've been very objective. From your perspective, like what are some of the more critical? They're probably all very important, obviously, but what are some of the more critical positions that are being voted on in this election?
You're right. I am going to say that they're all very important, and I think they really are. We are at a point where we're seeing everyone talks about it. The issues that our state is facing, whether it be homelessness, public safety, cost of living now with gas and inflation. These are always the top issues we keep hearing about. Elections have consequences, and if you don't participate, you're not contributing to the effort, the decision making. And so it's important that everyone takes the time to review the material, read about those running, read about their positions. And I think it's important for each individual, and this is how I approach it, looks at what are the issues most important to you as kind of the first step. The second step is which one of these candidates best addresses those issues as well as broader issues. We've seen what surprises like COVID can do, and it's important to have individuals who
have the right people,
have the right people. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there are plenty of opportunities out there. There are civic groups, voter guides, and whatnot that can share information and just doing research on people. I wouldn't recommend just relying on what you're reading on a social media post or anything like that.
Well, I was going to ask you that exact thing. Like, where would you say is a good source for for an objective perspective or a layout of, like, if I wanted to find information about certain candidates, and obviously there's going to be biased perspectives on social media or on the own campaign website or whatever it is. Is there a place to be able to find more objective information about a particular candidate or a particular race?
I personally rely on reading all of it. I try to get to everything, read the different perspectives. The voter guides are actually very good, have the candidate statements in there from all the candidates. But I think it does come down to putting in a little bit of research time to understand where they come from. I mean, we're all hit with so many different message points. It's important to not just take it at its face value, but take it and actually look at credibility of it and understand it, because something might be true, but it might be taken out of context,
Right.
and it's important to actually put in the time to really understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are debates you can watch or
Right. You can
participate
hear them
in.
speak for
There are
themselves.
coffee meet and greets that
Mm-hmm.
are hosted. There's all sorts of activities that take place during the campaign season that are great opportunities for you to directly engage these members.
So let me ask you a question then, and this, maybe there's not a clear answer for this, but so as I think of the different issues that, for instance, the city of Fremont faces, and I will see stuff like whether it's on Nextdoor or whether I'll see it on Facebook or whatever, and I see people. You'll see a particular person bring up a subject, like let's just say taxes or something like that, and that is being addressed by maybe a particular person that's running for an office. But then I will see comments underneath that, or maybe even Twitter, where they would say things like, well, what we really need to do is we need to fix the homeless problem. We need to deal with the homeless population. And I look at that and I just wonder sometimes, under a particular statement or under a certain person, if they're elected into that office, is that even their job? Like, is that even something that they have the ability to deal with? Or is this comment thread just really kind of a platform for somebody else to kind of voice what their concerns are? So I guess what I'm saying and what I'm getting to is, if we take the homelessness issue as a foil to kind of work with, like, who am I voting for that's going to be the most likely to be able to, not individual candidate, but what position within this vote, this election that we're having, is going to be able to have the biggest impact on what happens to, say, homelessness in Fremont or in the Bay Area? Who could champion that I'm going to be voting for? And then what are some of who would I be looking at and saying, you should do something about that? And they're like, well, that's not my job. Like, that's kind of a broad question, but I'm trying to figure out how to be able to know, if I have an issue, or if I have if I have a take on, like, homelessness, who is it that I should vote for that can make a difference?
I agree with you. I see those comments too all the time.
Right.
There are cases where that frustration, you're kind of pointing it everywhere just to see just to try to get it addressed. And at times, yes, you're right. There are certain elements that can only be handled by certain offices.
Right.
With regards to homelessness, I think it's a collective effort. Your local council member, your supervisors all play a role in it. Your state representatives will play a role in it, and then there's a federal aspect of it as well, because it is an issue across the country. It's not just isolated to California or the Bay Area or to Fremont specifically. Mm-hmm. And so everyone plays their role. Some will have a greater role than others, but with regards to homelessness, I think that every elected official and the general public play a role in that.
I got you. Well, that's helpful to know. And I think that that's both a bad and a good thing of our political system. The bad and good is that you can't get things done quickly if things need to be done. But the good side of it is that it's not just reliant on one person to make choices for everyone. Everyone's together and involved.
And it's different perspectives.
And it's different perspectives, exactly. Yeah. So thank you. I'm going to wrap this up in just a minute, but I don't know. One of the other things that I would ask about that I'm oftentimes very confused about, and I don't know if there's any in the primary election, and again, expressing my ignorance here, but I always see these props, prop, I don't know, 47 or prop, whatever. And I see those in, something I'm supposed to be voting on. And then I try to read through it and I'm like, I don't know what they're saying here. And I know that there's a quick and easy guide to that sometimes. First of all, do we have any props that we're going to be voting on that are significant and important and during this primary election. And then maybe what we just need to do is have a follow-up conversation when we get to closer to the November election, that we can talk a little bit more specifically about those. But are there any props that are important for us to be aware of here in Fremont?
Not in Fremont. There are a number of state propositions going through the formal process right now that'll either make it to the November ballot or will get withdrawn or dropped in the process. And so we'll know more about that in the coming months. The Fremont Chamber, through our Government Affairs Committee, will take a position on measures and propositions as they become available. For candidate-related, the Fremont Chamber doesn't do candidate endorsements, but the Business for Good Government Political Action Committee, which is made up of chamber members but is independent of the chamber board, will make its endorsements throughout the election process.
And where can we find those endorsements if people are interested in them?
Those endorsements can be found on FremontBGG.com.
Okay.
And for local measures or ballot measures, it can be on our chamber website, which is FremontBusiness.com.
Okay. That's great. Well, I know that politics, a few episodes ago, I interviewed 3 different religious leaders in our community, and they talk about the 3 things that you shouldn't talk about, are politics, religion, and I guess money. And we're dipping our toes into the politics right now. But I really appreciate you being willing to talk with me about this. Again, admittedly, this isn't something that I'm just not aware of, and I'm more ignorant than I am knowledgeable. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And I think if anything, and I think you've probably said this, and I kind of know what you're probably going to say. If I were to say, if someone's just looking at this saying, it's too big, I'm not going to even worry about it, I'm not going to vote. Like, what would be your appeal to them, to the person who just basically wants to ignore it all?
I hope there aren't those people out there. I will candidly share that it is important, I will stress it time and time again, that ballot is your voice. And it is important to vocalize and take a stance on issues, because it's all interconnected. What happens in Fremont impacts other parts of the Bay, impacts the state, and what happens in the state impacts federally. So it's important to play that role from the very granular, localized perspective, and that starts with you, the voter.
That's great. Well, thank you for your time, and I actually look forward to having you back on here. I know you don't like being behind a microphone, but
I'll make an exception.
There you go. Well, we'll look forward to having you back on here again, and I hope people get out and vote. I hope this is encouraging and helpful for them as well.
Thank you.
So, thanks.
You've been listening to the Fremont Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever it is that you listen so you don't miss an episode. And if you're so inclined, leave a kind review so that others can find the podcast. To stay connected with us, you can find links to our social media and other content at thefremontpodcast.com. This episode was hosted, edited, and produced by Ricky B. Music provided through Soundstripe.com. I'm Gary Williams. Join us next week on the Fremont Podcast.
Muggins Media.